Hello, everyone, and happy Carnival season. This is Chop and Brew. I am Chip Walton. This episode kicks off a 4-part Mardi Gras mini-series, and I'll tell you what, folks, I am over the moon pie about bringing it to you. This series is going to include a homebrew session at Chop and Brew HQ where I made a king cake spice pastry ale with mini king cakes chopped up in the mash just for the occasion. We also have a very festive and nerdy 3-beer tasting notes interview with brewer Mitch Gritman at Zony Mash Beer Project in New Orleans. But we kick things off with the most iconic and essential of Carnival season treats, the king cake. For this, I was lucky enough to find the guy who wrote the book on king cake. Literally, the big book of king cake, author Matt Haines. Matt and I discuss all things king cake, what they are, how they're continually evolving, who are the bakers that make them, and why does the Crescent City so passionately rally behind them year after year. Plus, we dig into some of the great debates of king cake. All that's just ahead. Just a quick reminder that episodes of Chop and Brew are brought to you with support from the crew of Chop and Brew over at Patreon. Join them on the parade route at patreon.com/chopandbrew. One last note, if after all of this talk of king cake leaves you hungry for some, and I think it's going to, check out your local bakeries. Chances are somebody might celebrate the season by making king cakes of their own. I can guarantee you there are New Orleans bakeries that would love to ship you one of their king cakes, probably no matter where you live, and I suggest that. I do that every year. Or this is a homebrew show after all, so if you want to try your hand at making your own, I'm going to post a link to a few recipes I found over the years in the video description below. Without further ado, it is king cake time. Let's let the good times roll. What's up, everybody? I'm here with Matt Haines, the author of the big book of king cake. We are sipping on some special king cake beers from New Orleans. This might be the only time I've ever felt urged to order a cake for an interview. So I've got my Gambino's king cake from New Orleans, which is featured in the book. Matt, what is going on?
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Chip. I'm happy to be here chatting king cake with you.
Dude, I understand it. So this is a busy time of year for somebody who wrote an awesome book on king cake.
Yeah, but you've got me at a good time zone. Like right now we're at what time is it? 8:43 at night. So there's no other event going on. This is perfect. So there's no place I'd rather be than chatting here with you right now about this. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So we're going to talk a few things, what makes king cakes different in the 2022, some of our favorites, maybe some beer inspired, but first and foremost, for the uninitiated, just kind of, and I know this sounds like, hey, try to put 40 minutes of stuff into a minute, but just kind of what is a king cake? How did it come to be this kind of essential treat or iconic dessert of Carnival season?
Yeah, that is a tough question because I've spent so much time making a really big book out of it. But I think that to me, a king cake is it's going to be eaten between 12th night, which is also known as Epiphany, which is a Catholic holiday. So January 6th is always when you'd start eating it in New Orleans. And it's eaten all the way until Fat Tuesday or Mardi Gras, which this year is March 1st, but that date kind of changes. And so it's always eaten in that window of time in New Orleans to celebrate Carnival season. It's kind of like the mascot food of Carnival season at this point. It's generally ring-shaped, which to continue with that Christian imagery, it's supposed to be. Some people say it's like a crown because 12th night, the day you start eating it, is the 12th night of Christmas. It's when the 3 kings found the baby Jesus and presented their 3 gifts to him. And so that's what that day is celebrating. And in New Orleans, it's everywhere in the world that eats it, it's kind of usually a colorful top. In New Orleans, that's because it's got icing on top, and then purple, green, and gold sugar, which purple, green, and gold are kind of the colors of Mardi Gras. And so I guess that's when it came to New Orleans by way of France. Before that, it was like an ancient Roman thing for their Saturnalia festival. So it's got a thousands-year-old history. But really now in New Orleans, it's not so much of a religious thing. It's more of just a Mardi Gras thing. And at one point it was brioche dough, lightly sweetened with no filling. And now, as you see in the book, it's like every filling known to man and woman is in this thing, and with new ones being created all the time. And so it's really a chance for the bakers of this city to put their own unique spin on it, and that's when it's gotten really fun.
And it would be like cream cheese or like lemon filling, but now it's like muffalata. I love in your book you've got like, there's some freaking like crawfish, basically etouffee almost versions, and muffalata and bacon topped kind of pork belly cubes on top. So it sounds like the personality of a baker is a big part of it, whether that's the legends all the way up to the newest of the new. Kind of what do you find people bring into this equation in 2022 to express their kind of festive celebration for carnival season?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of how I organized the book. When I set out to write the book, I thought it was going to be just a big book about cake. And then within the first couple of interviews, it became obvious, like this is so much more interesting if I make it about the people who bake the cakes. And for some of them, king cake to them is about the tradition involved. For some of them, it's kind of like, wow, the interesting thing about their cakes that they've been around for decades or a century. For others, it's about the community that they are making the cakes for. For others, it's about the ingredients they're using, and those are the different sections. And so I guess like the thing that was most striking to me was that there are certain things about king cake that are going to always be, that's what king cake is. Like they're always this shape, or they're always, there's always a bean or a feb hidden inside it. But the unique bits, when you look at why that baker made this specific decision on this ingredient, that's like the really interesting thing, because it usually tells us something about their history or where they came from and how they're trying to adapt this tradition and this food that's been around for so long in the city they love, but add just a little bit of their own family history or the things they think are important into it.
Did you go into all these places in 1 year? Is this kind of a carnival season's worth of effort?
Yeah, so we did it this past summer, actually, which it's a major no-no here in New Orleans to eat king cake out of season. But there's no way, like bakeries are so busy during carnival season. So there was no way we were going to be able to get this kind of access with them then. And so during the summer, it's a little bit of a slower time. And so me and Randy, the photographer, went into all these bakeries and had them make us cakes out of season. And we did our interviews and had all the cakes and did photo shoots and stuff so that it would be ready for carnival season. But yeah, we did it all in one summer. And I ate pretty much every single cake in that book. Randy showed a little more restraint. I gained a lot of weight because I did not show it.
So I wanted to ask you, what are some of the great debates of king cake? Like I have a few in mind, but like as you went through them, when people are like holding steady to some morals and some philosophy, like where do you see those big kind of like dichotomies and binaries when you're baking king cake?
Yeah, I think that the biggest one, I think by far, is whether you can only eat it in season or if it's something that could be eaten all year. And for most people, I think there is something that's like nice about this is a special thing that can pretty much only be found, not exclusively, but predominantly can be found in like one geographic area in New Orleans, at least here in the US. And it's only in from this day to this day, and that's it. And the rest of the year, you're kind of like pining for it. But then at the same time, there's all these bakeries make so much money from selling king cakes. And so if they can make a little bit more money by selling it starting on Thanksgiving instead of January 6th, like, I don't know, I don't want any of these businesses to close down if that helps them keep the doors open, especially now it's a pretty tough time for small business. Who might argue for that? So I can see both sides. I think another one is there's a debate right now that the plastic baby, is a part of a thousands years of tradition of hiding that fed into the cake, and you whoever gets the slice or with the bean or the baby hidden inside is crowned king or queen for the day, or the season or whatever. And now places are afraid of choking hazards, and so they will actually have the baby outside the cake for the family to put in themselves. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know, like that's there's a debate there as well about people, if you feel plastic in your mouth, don't keep eating it, is what some people might say. Also, like, should there be icing and fillings in king cake, or is it just like should this be plain dough with a little bit of cinnamon? And that's king cake, because if you grew up in New Orleans in the 1960s, 70s, maybe even 80s, like you were always eating this cake called the king cake called Mackenzie's, and they didn't even have no cinnamon, no icing, no fillings, just it was some lightly sweetened brioche dough and the 3-colored sugar, and that's it. And so I don't know, like for a lot of people, if you put icing on it, they're like, that's not king cake, that's a cinnamon roll. But for a lot of people in New Orleans, that icing is what king cake is. You couldn't have king cake without the icing. Yeah, you need that icing. And so it just depends on what you grew up with. And so those are some of the debates that come to mind. How about you? Are there any that you think I'm missing?
Well, I was wondering, and the book goes into kind of like the second tier of filling versus not filling, is like filling baked early versus filling kind of pumped in. And then there's the sugar versus sprinkles, the jimmies versus the dusting sugar. Those are the two that I was kind of like, oh yeah, I don't know. I'm not enough of a baker to know that if you pumped it full of the filling first, I assume the heat and the time in the oven does something magical to it.
Yeah, I think that's probably the only thing I'm not a baker either. And the only thing that I could have like a really strong opinion on is that it seems to me the cakes, in my opinion, are better when the filling is baked into the dough instead of inserted through the bottom after the cake's already baked, because I think it lets that dough kind of moisturize by way of the filling. And then also I think by some places don't braid or twist the dough, it's just kind of a ring and that's it. Other places will braid the dough and you can it just is a really beautiful look to it. But I think that also makes sure that you then get filling throughout the entire cake. That's a really helpful thing. Other places will just twist the dough, which kind of makes it look like braiding. Actually, Gambino's, they don't braid, they twist it. And so you'll kind of see like little turns, but it's not quite the full braiding.
Okay, now I've got the praline cream right here. Ooh,
yeah, that looks awesome.
I'm getting started on it. It's like spilling sugar all over my laptop. One thing I wanted to ask is but you also kind of found these savory, these more modern, everything from a muffalata to almost like crawfish bread, back to your original point of like the bakers putting their personality into this. Like, it's kind of like no holds barred at this point, but it's also like, don't make a mockery of the template, right?
Yeah, and I think actually I was just talking to some friends about this today. I feel like I don't know. This is not me getting political. I just think it's an interesting point that like people say like, oh, there's half the country that is like so progressive and trying to move things forward, and there's another half that are like kind of don't want things to change too much. I think there actually is a world where that's helpful. Like, and like to apply that now to king cake, real quick before we get into anything political. There are a lot of people here in New Orleans now who want to, push king cake forward, because I think their point of view would be that king cake has always been evolving. And so why are we just going to pick, oh, this is what king cake is? It can never be. King cake is just no icing with 3-colored sugar. But if you go back 100 years before that, king cake evolved to that point. So king cake has always been changing. So why are we going to stop it changing now? But to your point, at the same time, it's nice to have a tradition that's kind of reining things in. Part of the fun in writing the book was that battle between tradition and this like constant evolving, which I think is really stark in king cake, but exists probably in like a lot of foods all over the country. I just had a king cake party the other day, and I think this is like an interesting thing. Like originally for decades, king cake parties meant that whoever was hosting the party brought one cake, and whoever got the the baby or the bean inside that cake would then host next week's party, or bring, like in New Orleans, if you go into a break room at work or you go into any classroom on a Friday in grade school, there's going to be a king cake there that one person brought. But like king cake parties now outside of those things actually mean like everybody comes in with a different king cake, and there's all these different varieties. I just hosted one the other day, and we had like 50 something different kinds of king cake there. We might have more king cakes than people there, because if everyone's bringing a king cake, the math actually doesn't work out. Then you have to eat an entire king cake by yourself at that party, or an entire king cake's worth of slices. So it doesn't completely make sense, but it's fun to try all those different varieties.
So have you seen breweries kind of step up and distillers step up? Like, what's kind of the vibe around this time of year outside of king cake, when people are kind of like, all right, we also want to play this game with these flavors and these themes?
Yeah, and we have, I mean, you're seeing it not just in brewers and distillers, and you're seeing it like in at the back of the book, I kind of do like all these different varieties of king cake, whatever. And you've got, jewelry makers who do king cake shaped jewelry. There's a soap maker, there's a king cake soap, which looks basically like a king cake and smells like a king cake, but it's soap, not king cake. And so there's all sorts of different king cake related items. It's really just king cake mania at this point. And so I'm actually surprised. There's several breweries here in New Orleans that do a king cake beer, but not as many as I would think yet. But it's definitely growing all the time. Zoni Mash, the one you have, is one of my favorites. But then, I mean, like I've got this one from Urban South, which is really nice as well, and a completely different style of beer. And it also just kind of brings out like, what is king cake flavor? I think people say cinnamon and vanilla and stuff like that, but you can make a case for a lot of different things. But yeah, it's fun. I mean, I think it's just a chance for king cake is increasingly becoming just this flavor icon of the season. And so it's fun, I think, for everybody to get, in the spirit of it. I just think that's so cool that there's still things in the world that exist like that, and that an entire city rallies around this stuff. There was one baker who I interviewed for the book. She's from Philadelphia originally, and she's like, this is such an amazing city where people debate bakeries during this time of year, like everywhere else debates sports teams. It's like, who's got the best king cake? No, this is the best king cake. No, this is the best king cake. Like you're debating the Eagles or the Giants or something like that. And that's, I don't know, I think that's really fun.
I won't ask you what your favorites are, but I will ask you kind of, what is your favorite kind of version of a king cake?
Yeah. Well, I'll answer favorite if you want. And I think it's relevant too, because they ship. So it could be fun for, I'll tell you, I don't know if it's, depending on the day, I am craving a different kind of cake. Like right now, I really want a muffalata king cake, but that's not my favorite necessarily, but it's just what I'm craving right now. But Tartine, Tartine, they make a little more of a basic king cake with a cinnamon cream cheese filling inside. And it is just it's done so well. And it ships for not nearly as expensive as a lot of king cakes ship for, but the quality is so good. And I would suggest, they ship Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and sometimes on Thursday. And if you're looking to have a king cake sent to you that is really well done and kind of it's your first king cake, it encapsulates what it's supposed to be, Tartine's a really good one, in my opinion. It's the first king cake I ever had, and I was like, wow, this is incredible. That was a bunch of years ago. I've had more now, but that was a really good one. To your point, there was one baker who said, she used the example of, she's like, king cakes are like mayonnaise, in that you eat the king cake, you eat the king cake that your mom or grandma had, and that's what king cake is to you. Just like we don't often switch mayonnaise brands. It's like whatever mayonnaise brand was available to us as kids, that's kind of our favorite. We don't think too much about it. And I think king cake for a lot of people is similar. For me, I only moved here to New Orleans 13 years ago. And so king cake was not quite as wild as it is now, but pretty wild. And so for me, I'm open to I think it's cool that there's an octopus king cake or a muffalata king cake, or the Insectarium here in New Orleans has a king cake with crickets on top. And I think all that stuff it's not my favorite kind of king cake, but I love that it exists and all these different versions exist, because it just tells us a lot about the people who make them, which is neat. Yeah. No, I mean, my girlfriend moved here in March 2020, right at the start of the pandemic.
Oh my gosh.
And, and I just feel like she has not been able to enjoy the best part of the city yet. And I think that's about, this whole season, starting with Mardi Gras, going all the way through Jazz Fest, is just an awesome time to live here.
Well, good luck. Stay hydrated, bro.
Yep, you got it. I drink lots of water and also beer and this rum thing.
Congratulations. Good luck on the rest of your carnival season.
Yeah, thanks, man. If you ever come down to New Orleans, next time you come here, let me know. We can grab a beer together. It'd be awesome to meet in person.
Yeah, man. Cheers.